On today's episode, World's Toughest Recap with Tough Mudder CEO Giles Chater. This is the World's Toughest Podcast. Welcome to the World's Toughest Podcast, where we talk about any obstacle course race you'd like, as long as that's World's Toughest Mudder. Each week we talk to members of the WTM community and share stories of success and failure in the single greatest event in OCR. My name is Will Hicks, and this is the World's Toughest Podcast. Welcome back to World's Toughest Podcast. My name is Will Hicks. Thank you for listening. This is the most magical time of the year. Before we start, you can email me, will@theocrreport.com. You can follow the show on Instagram at the OCR Report. You can text me personally, 619-485-2726. That goes straight to my phone. Shoot me a text. It'll take me a day or two to reply, but I would love to talk with you. Were you at World's Toughest Mudder 2022? Did you watch World's Toughest Mudder on our live stream? I have lots of thoughts about this year at World's Toughest. It was a great year, great event, as always. It was an honor to be a part of it. My team and I were in charge of the live stream, 24-hour event. This is the first year I have not run World's Toughest Mudder that I was not injured since 2015, or 2014 rather. And I kind of went back and forth with FOMO from seeing everyone running and then being like, oh man, it sucks out there. I'm glad I'm not running, to being like, man, everyone did so good. And it was just a great event. And it's an honor to be a part of it. And if you weren't out there this year running, I hope you can make it out next year, 2023. It's in Dallas. There's so much we can talk about. I just want to just briefly share my thoughts. It was a great event. DJ Fox won for the men with 105 miles. Chris Rogloski won for the women with 100 miles. Did you see Chris Rogloski this weekend? We knew, and I talk about this in an interview with somebody that one of the athletes that'll come out in a couple days or next week maybe. But we knew that a woman would run 100 miles eventually, right? It was only a matter of time. It was a matter of if, not, or a matter of when, not if. We knew it would happen. But it just hasn't happened yet. Amelia set the women's record a long time ago with 90 miles. Rhea Coble tied it in 2017 with 90 miles. Katie Knight tied it in 2021 rather, with 90 miles. But no woman has been able to break 100 miles. The women were shooting for it this year. I had a couple women tell me that their goal this year was 100 miles. I've had women in the past tell me, I've had ladies that their goal was 100 miles, but they didn't want to say it out loud. They didn't want to jinx it, or they would tell me personally, privately, but they didn't want to talk about it publicly. And this year, Chris Rogloski, in her first year at World's Toughest Mudder, ran 100 miles for the ladies. It was an amazing accomplishment. We're going to talk with Chris here in a few weeks. We're going to give her a minute. She did awesome. And it's something else that was remarkable. The man's winner, DJ Fox, 105 miles. An amazing accomplishment. The gap between man and woman winner, male and female winners, only 5 miles. That's the closest since Amelia Boone and Jun Young Pak in, I want to say 2012. Like Amelia had a shot to actually win that race outright. She had a chance. It just didn't happen. Jun Young Pak won. But this other, since 2012, this is the closest. Typically there's, 15-mile gap between the men's and women's winners. Give or take, maybe 5, maybe 10, but 15 miles, you say. So if you take Rogloski's results out of this weekend, if you just pretend she wasn't there, the top women finished with 85 miles. So, it's a regular year, 20 miles behind the male winner. That's about what it usually works out to. But Chris just had an amazing race. She's a remarkable athlete, and I hope she is a part of World's Toughest Mudder, the race, and the community for years and years to come. So let's talk about the podcast. So this last year, 2022, we did 8 episodes of the podcast. This is the 9th episode. Very few episodes. Why is your podcast dead? My podcast's not dead. Your podcast is dead. We have been focusing on the live race streaming part of the sport at the OCR port. World Toughest Podcast is a part of, I feel like everyone, if you don't know, there's the OCR port. That is our parent organization. But then we have a bunch of stuff underneath it, like inside of it. We have World Toughest Podcast. We have our live streaming. We have our social media. We have Obstacle Running Adventures, Mike and Caitlin. Congratulations, Mike and Caitlin. They got married the day of World Toughest Mudder. We have a bunch of people and groups, and it's a place for people that want to support the sport to come and, get race results and support the sport, watch the sport. We all do this because we love it. So at the OCR port, we've been focusing on live streaming this year, and it's honestly been awesome. It's been a great year. We work with Spartan. We live stream Spartans races. We live stream World's Toughest Mudder. We live stream Obstacle Horse Racing World Championships. We live stream DECA this weekend. Check out the DECA World Championships on the OCR Port YouTube channel. And that's been the focus. We have a guy on our crew, Jason Dupree, who does amazing work. When you watch a race live streamed, 9 times out of 10, it's because Jason is behind the scenes doing all the heavy lifting. I can't say enough about the hard work Jason does for our team. So if you were watching youtube.com/toughmudder this weekend, you were able to watch the entire 24-hour live stream. I would love your feedback on the live stream. We had Fran Curando from the UK. She flew over to be our co-host. I worked with her for 24 hours. It was just, I can't speak highly enough about Fran. I can't speak highly enough about the experience. If you got a chance to watch any of the live stream, still lives there. It's over on YouTube, youtube.com/toughmudder. You can watch it. There's a link if you go to the OCR Port Instagram at the OCR Port. There's a link to a playlist of all of our coverage from the weekend. We had a preview interview with Chris Maltby. You may have seen. We ran the hot lap. Myself and Jason and Fran and Carla Piscatello, who handled our social media, as well as jumping into the booth for a minute there, or for more than a minute, several hours. Ran the hot lap on Friday. It's a great experience. There's literally so much to talk about, and we're going to talk about it in the next few episodes. We have lots of interviews with elites and with regular community folks. But today we are talking with the Tough Mudder CEO, Giles Chater. So it just kind of started on accident, but it's become a tradition now. After the brunch, I sit down with the Tough Mudder CEO, and we talk about the race, and we talk about the year, and we talk about Tough Mudder and how everything's going. A couple years ago at the brunch, it just kind of worked out where Kyle McLaughlin, the current CEO of Tough Mudder, was still in the room, and I was still in the room, and we were going to do an interview, and just everyone else just kind of left, and it was just literally just Kyle and I in the room, and while the hotel room staff were shutting the place down, while Kyle and I just sat at a table and had a good chat. And then the next year we did it again, and then this year Giles and I did it. So literally every year, if you hang out at brunch long enough, like a while, bar crawl's already started. People are having fun over there, but you'll get to see me and the Tough Mudder CEO sit down and have a chat about the race and the sport. So special thanks to Giles. This is his first year as Tough Mudder CEO, and following in the footsteps of a beloved CEO, Kyle McLaughlin. I'm sure it's a big deal. The Tough Mudder community is awesome. I'm not gonna say but. The Tough Mudder community is awesome, and they have strong opinions from time to time. So Giles gets to work with that, every single day as he preps for events and for World's Toughest Mudder. Before we talk with Giles, there was some, I don't know if controversy is probably the right word. Some discussion about, I don't know how to get into this. There was discussion about cheating on the course, and it wasn't widespread. There was just, anyway, that whole conversation hadn't really gotten public the time Giles and I talked. So it doesn't, anyway, let me tell you one thing, the OCR report, a World's Toughest podcast will not be. We will not be TMZ. There's one time in our podcast history when we had two guys on the show. One guy had failed a drug test at a different race, and his team was stripped of the win from winning World's Toughest Mudder. And there was another guy who very publicly accused him of doing it intentionally. The guy who was disqualified, he owned up to it. He said, "Yeah, I did it. I didn't mean to do it. Here's how it happened." And he had a very plausible, explanation for here's how it happened. It's on me. I take responsibility for it, but it was not intentional. And then another guy said, "Yeah, you did it, and you did it on purpose, and you're lying about doing it on purpose or not." And so both of them wanted to talk on a podcast and kind of air it out. And so we hosted it and we did it. And looking back on it, it's riveting audio. It's riveting, but it's not something I'm necessarily proud of. Like, it's not my finest hour as a podcast. So we don't have any interest in doing that in the future. World's Toughest Podcast will never be TMZ. The OCR report is not here to have, spicy hot takes and gossipy this or scandalous that. It'll never happen. We are here because we love the sport of obstacle course racing. We want it to be around for the next 100 years. We want our kids and our grandkids to be able to run World's Toughest Mudder and Spartan World Championships and OCR World Championships. So we'll report the news 100%. And when whatever happens, when the truth is out there, we're there. But we will not be TMZ, and we will not participate in that. All that to say, it was an honor this weekend to talk with Giles. I was proud to be a part of the team bringing the coverage, and it was fun. It was a great. The race means a lot to me personally. World's Toughest Mudder, I wouldn't do a podcast about it if I didn't care, right? I mean, I don't know. Hey, before we talk with Giles, let's read some iTunes reviews.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars. 5 stars.
No iTunes reviews, but that's my fault, not yours. We've had one episode in the last 8 months. But if you would do me a kindness, open the Purple Podcast app on your iPhone or iPad or iOS device, search for World's Toughest Podcast, scroll down, click Write a Review, and I will read it on a future episode. Also, if you listen on Spotify, you can't leave written reviews on Spotify, but just click on the main page there of World's Toughest Podcast on Spotify, and you can leave a review there as well. I hope it is 5 stars. Giles Chater is the Tough Mudder CEO. It's time to talk with Giles Chater. Let's go to the phones. Giles Chater, we just finished the post-race brunch and awards ceremony. Your first World's Toughest Mudder as CEO. How did it go?
We had a good time. It looks like the community had a good time as well. I think we had excellent racing. We had challenging weather. We had fun obstacles. but just most of all, right, we just had inspiring stories, everything that we want to see at Worlds, the best of the community, enjoying the best of obstacle course racing.
You know, the weather. You mentioned the weather. It took a turn and fast. The race started at noon, and it was getting cold almost right away.
I mean, what a delight. I'm sure you were watching there. There was a lot of chat about the kind of mileage that was going to get put up, and going to be honest, right? We were nervous as people went out of the gate. There was some pretty impressive running, and we were like, oh, wait till it gets cold and wet. And thankfully that upped the challenge. I think it's great. Challenging weather, I think, adds a really interesting element to the event that we like.
You can't plan for it, but when it happens like that, or 2018, we talk about a lot, the ice storm year, it can be the biggest obstacle the runners face.
Oh, it certainly is, and to your point, right, you can't plan for it, but you almost have to plan for it. They can't guarantee the weather, so you got to turn up in that wetsuit. I know no one likes to be told they got to bring a wetsuit, but maybe a smart decision.
Every year there's one or two guys who are like, I don't need a wetsuit, I'll just run faster to stay warm. Okay, God bless you.
Yeah, never quite works out how they'd like. And I think just in all the events, we were discussing it as a team partway through, you never really know what it is that's going to end up becoming the significant challenge for the event, whether it's a particular penalty or a particular obstacle. But there's always something that catches people.
During the pre-race briefing, it was with you or Chris, I think it was you who said that a lot of records were set last year, and we don't think we're going to see those this year. And then 24 hours later, Chris Rogowski runs 100 miles.
What an incredible achievement, and what an incredible run by Chris. That was just magnificent, wasn't it? I think it was me. I said it. And if you look across the field, it wasn't a record-setting year at all. And I think that makes her achievement even more significant. You know, the men hit roughly where you'd expect, and the rest of the female field hit roughly where you would expect, and then she was just like an astonishing outlier and ran an exceptional race.
It was her first year at World's Toughest Mudder, and I believe her first Tough Mudder, period. So it'll be exciting to see what she does going forward in the race.
Well, I certainly hope we'll see her back, and we had a number of people for whom it was their first time into Tough Mudder. I was sitting through the race briefings on the Friday, as we took the Tough Mudder irreverence in, and I'd been chatting to a number of people who'd come over from Spartan beforehand, who was his first. I definitely had a chuckle to myself, and I thought, I wonder how they're enjoying a slide that's got an alligator on it, or someone who's just poking fun of the athletes at a briefing. But generally, I think they quite enjoyed the balance that we find across the challenge and the fun and the camaraderie in course.
Have you gotten any feedback from those Spartan races? The Spartan Ultra World Championship was canceled, so those racers were offered a free entry to World's Toughest Mudder. Has any of them given feedback like, hey, this is fun or silly or...
Verbally, and so I, had a particularly long conversation with one gentleman before we started. He was giving me a lot of feedback about penalties he described as silly, gimmicky. And I think that was based on the time of, how they were described in writing, and he worried that the challenge wouldn't be there, or it would be too luck-based. And, after the event, I guess two things happened. One, he didn't run in a wetsuit, and he found the whole thing more challenging than he'd imagined. Two, he's like, yeah, this was an outrageously good event and a great challenge. And three, he's like, actually, do you know what? Those penalties were good. I can get into that. That's all right.
One of the things I like about the silly penalties, there was one where you had, I don't know the name of it, but you had to put blocks, 2x4 blocks on your feet and wear drunk goggles, is that it's mentally taxing because you just failed an obstacle, you got wet, and you're frustrated with yourself. I could have passed that, I didn't, and now I have to do this quote-unquote stupid penalty. It's gimmicky. Well, if your mind is not right, then it's just going to throw it off, and then you got to run, and you got to do more obstacles right after that. So I like that burpees are the common penalty we talk about in Spartan. Burpees are mindless. You just do them, and you mentally do not have to engage. But I like that... And you don't want just, mental challenges like you fail this penalty, you're going to do a math problem. But I like that it's a mental game as well.
I think the word you used there, the frustration, that's exactly it. There was, one of the penalties on Dingleberries where you were having to take a popsicle stick and move some sand, and dealing with that degree of frustration mid-race where you've maybe been used to just getting in the zone and plotting it out with your mind in autopilot, I think is one of the things that makes it tough.
How did your team enjoy the race? The production team, the staff, how did everything go on that side of it?
Yeah, they had a wonderful time, and it was a really smooth race from a race operations perspective. And what we had done this year is we had not linked this event to a Tough Mudder event the weekend before, which allowed the team to focus. And one of the things I've been wanting the team to do is engage with the community, have fun at their expense, be a little bit more ambitious on the build. And we really saw that, and they enjoy it. They really enjoy the freedom to, express ourselves. And then the reception they get, the support they get, is fantastic. It's really energizing for them as well. They appreciate the community and the support the community provide.
Talking about big builds, Just Shoot Me, the first obstacle on the course, Mudderhorn, and on the backside is a giant slide. Tell me about how did that come to be?
I mean, the community had been pressuring me for a while for a slide. Like, we want a slide. And we're like, yeah, we could do that. And so, that was a steer to both teams, our team in the UK and in the US. Like, let's get a slide at the door. And we've always thought it'd be pretty cool to do a slide off the back of Mudderhorn. And we have the opportunity to do stuff at Worlds, both because of the experience of the participant base, and just also because the volume of participants that we couldn't do at a normal event. And so we let Derek, who works in the product team with Chris, actually, is like, go have at it, see what we can do here. And we were really pleased with the result. There's a good bit of airtime. You were hitting the water really fast, which is what we wanted, right? We didn't want people just plopping off the edge. And that point about the mentality of it all, it was a very, very intimidating entrance into the top of that tube.
We had video from the top, and then we'd cut the video at the bottom of people coming out. That obstacle, and I didn't go down the slide, but I was standing at the bottom looking up at the top. It's terrifying. It is just in scale, in epicness, in just the drop. You're literally, it's not straight down. It's maybe but it feels like it looks straight down. And then when they come out of the slide, they are flying across that splash pool.
I think terrifying is the right word. I'd certainly, I went up when we were safety checking it on the Friday, and it was the first time I'd looked enough the top, and I quite enjoy heights. I quite enjoy slides. Slides is a good place. And I was like, oh, this is going to be quite something, which was wonderful, right? That's the sense you want. As we saw it, we're like, we're really pleased with what we've done here, and the team get a lot of energy out of that, and I hope we can capitalize on this and bring a greater degree of year-on-year innovation back to the Tough Mudder product.
When we were talking during the live stream, you told me your favorite obstacle on course this weekend was Jiggle Jiggle. Tell me about Jiggle Jiggle. Did that play out the way you were hoping?
Do you know what? It was one of the things that amused me the most. Taking the water wiggles, lubricating them, having people go through what's a fairly fun, fairly interesting obstacle anyway, like trying to keep these in their hands. And we just had a wonderful time amusing ourselves with how this was going to play out. Then I went out with Jesse in the evening, and I got to Jiggle Jiggle. I just had this ridiculous grin on my face, and I tried to pick the wiggly out of the bucket, and it was all over the place. And it was great, right? And I think an obstacle that's taxing, you're into cold water, it's pretty slow going through there. Turning that from a slog into something that's a little bit of amusement, especially if you're going through with a group of people. Just a delight.
How much of a factor in obstacle design is, I think this is funny?
Do you know, a big part of Tough Mudder is just the irreverence of the brand, and I talk about balance a lot. It's got to be challenging. If it isn't challenging, there isn't a sense of personal accomplishment. It's got to be based around team and camaraderie, but it also has to be fun. And so we don't take ourselves too seriously, and we like that to translate out into the event. And if it turns out the obstacle isn't great, at least we've amused ourselves, which has got to count for something.
I think the feedback I got that the hardest obstacle was the Devil's Beard, Satan's Mustache. There were a couple, but that one's the one that kept being mentioned to me as probably the hardest obstacle, at least the most disliked obstacle on course.
I've been using this with a team for a number of years to make a point. It's really easy when you've got to get 20, 30 obstacles on an event and you're really stressed to the build crew, right? There's been bad weather behind the curve, to just get a net and drop it on the ground and be like, tick, obstacle, move on. And it doesn't take a lot of thought or effort to take that obstacle from something that everyone thinks is a bit of a joke into something that the community can really talk about that's genuinely challenging and fun. And So we use that almost as the example, and I encourage the team to just continue to play with it, both so we can really challenge the customers and have fun, and also to just keep reminding ourselves that we should never drop into the tick box mentality of building obstacle course races. We've been using it in the UK for a number of years, and it is significantly harder than what you saw here, and we continue to play with that. And I have some ideas for next year as well, which are going to be pretty sporty.
Hilda, did you just say that the UK version of Devil's Beard is harder than what we just did here today?
That is a true story. We were selling T-shirts in the UK, Fear the Beard. And that's where a lot of that innovations come from. We consistently make it pretty difficult out there.
I guess you could put it on a hill. What makes it harder over there?
Just everything. The direction, right? Direction change. Do you loop it back? Do you run up a hill? How long do you make it?
So instead of going straight through, you got to make a turn?
Yeah. Do you start to put dead ends into it? What do you put on top? What do you put in underneath? The options are endless. And I guess the point here is we have a really simple obstacle, which everyone could get to and just be like, well, what a waste of time. Why is this on the course? Or with a little bit of effort and creativity, we can make this something that people talk about. And if you think about the investment that goes into an event, people shouldn't be talking about a net lying on the ground. But they are.
100%. You spent, I don't know how many thousands and thousands of dollars to build that slide, and $50 worth of black tarp and a net, and they're equally, I don't know, equally. They're both terrifying.
I always, when I hear people have given up those coveted wristbands to bypass the beard, I feel so happy inside.
When I got to I did the hot lap the day before the race, and we got to the beard obstacle, and the net was so tight on the ground with the black tarp laying over it. I thought you were supposed to go between the two. I didn't know you were supposed to go under the net, and I should know that. I was at the briefing, and then we figured out we did it the wrong way, and even just going under the black tarp, it's a thick black tarp. There's no sunlight is penetrating it. It's kind of terrifying just with the tarp.
If you can believe such a thing, we actually made it easier. So when Chris went through, there had been full-length tarp when he was testing it, and he got so disorientated and so lost in there. He's like, I'm starting to panic, and I never panic. And so we actually cut the distance of the tarp in half for the event. So it occurs to me, be interested to hear what people think. Sure. We could just put a tarp on the ground, and then another tarp on top of that, whole bunch of lube in the middle, and then a net over the top of that, and have people try and get through that with very little friction underneath them, but at least their bibs wouldn't catch on the net. What do we think?
So ground, tarp, lube, tarp, net.
Exactly. People were complaining about getting, head torches and bibs caught in the net, and I was like, well, I could fix that. I could put another tarp under the net. And then I thought, with no friction, that'd be pretty interesting to get through.
I personally love the idea. If it's on a hill, you could slide right through it.
You're a bad man.
You could call it birth canal.
They will hold you accountable for that next year.
No, I do not want to be involved in any obstacle design process. Carlo did that one year, and he still gets grief for it 3 years later. So I'm happy to offer feedback, but I don't want my name on it. No, sir. So one thing new this year was the 25-mile bibs for the adaptive athletes. Brand new for 2020-22. Jessie Strawham, who's one of our wheelchair athletes, she was telling me about it before the race. I hadn't heard about it yet, and she was telling me. She had tears in her eyes of joy, describing the emotions that after 6 years of work, this is finally happening. She was so excited. She was calling her friends, her other, another guy named Superman, who's run World Toughest Mudder before in a wheelchair. Tell me about the adaptive athletes bibs and kind of how those came to be.
I think all of us are so inspired by the stories, and it's easy to be inspired. It's difficult to take the time to really understand. And for a number of years at Tough Mudder, I think we've done the former. Right, we've talked about the inspiration that we get. But I don't think we've fully taken the time to really understand and to listen and to work with that community, and that's a big part of what Chris and I are trying to do with Tough Mudder globally, and we're also working on the Spartan side actually with the adaptive community. And so this is a step in the right direction. And I went out with Jessie on Saturday night and team, and that was pretty incredible. Right, they are an amazing group. But then when I saw them across the finish line, I'd been there and it was wonderful, and I teared up because even thinking we understood how much this was going to mean to them, and being more than happy to do it and make the steps, it's only in that moment that you really understand. You really get a sense of what it does mean, and blown away. And I think it motivates us to listen harder, to learn more, and to move faster. This is long overdue.
It was her team got, Jessie wasn't here at the brunch today, but her team got recognition for the inspiration they offer to the community, and they came up on stage, and even the members of the team who aren't in wheelchairs all got the 25-mile adaptive athlete bib.
And I think a really big part of Tough Mudder to me is helping other people. But as we translate our brand, I think there are two pieces. It's the willingness to help, but the willingness to be helped. And in a lot of ways, if you're physically strong and fit and able, it feels great to help other people. But I think in a lot of ways it takes a lot more to accept help. And a big part of, for me, why Jessie is so inspiring is, you have this really independent woman who is prepared to accept a significant amount of help. And it's amazing that people are willing to help, but in the accepting of help as well, I think she teaches us all a really powerful lesson.
When you see her team pull her over, go up and down Mudderhorn, she's very vulnerable. She's in a harness, and she puts a lot of trust and a lot of faith in her teammates.
She does. I mean, it's genuinely incredible. And again, right, it's really easy for us to think we understand, but I can't really imagine what it takes from Jessie to trust so completely, in that team. And they're a wonderful group around her, which helps. But she's certainly at the core bringing them together, and it's something else. I think it's difficult to put into words what that means, but I encourage everyone to just stop and pause and watch and think, do I really get it? Can I listen a bit harder? Right? Is there a lesson in here for me as well?
We had several adaptive athletes this year, and there's lots of race categories at World's Toughest Mudder. I don't know if some year there might be even a podium for adaptive athletes.
Yeah, simply put, yes. It's long overdue. It's a really big step, but it has to be the first of many, and we're going to do quite a lot more in this space in the years ahead.
What else stood out to you from this year's race? Or some of the highlights, or some of maybe the memories you would take for you as you go back to the office next week?
I think it's always the people. It was great to have a larger contingent of international participants again. Certainly not a highlight, but I was looking at the top 10 men and top 10 women there, and you had 19 Americans and a Canadian there, and I was like, oh, we're going to have to sort this out. I'm not sure I'm okay with that. It's always the community, right? The individual moments, and then those individual moments, they come together collectively. The period of the event I like the most is that kind of 8 o'clock through 1 o'clock period where you're just watching people come across the finish line. And, you were there the whole time. You were seeing them. It means so much to them.
So I was working with the team live streaming the race on Tough Mudder's YouTube page, which is still there at youtube.com/toughmudder. And I've never been at the finish. I've gone through the finish line multiple times, but I'm exhausted. I want to get to my tent and tear down and get out of there. When you finish the race, you're done. And so it was a privilege this year to get to sit there and watch. I teared up multiple times watching Jessie Strawham come across the finish, watching Chris Rogloski come across the finish line. There was another team, I don't know their name, but there were 8 or 10 of them, and they all stopped about 10 feet before they got to the finish line. They got all their people together. They were arm in arm, and I'm almost tearing, and I don't even know why. Seeing that effect, I don't know these people. I don't know their story. I don't know how many miles they did, but they were waiting for each other just so they could all cross the finish line at the end of 24 hours together. And it was being able to be there at the finish line was a privilege this year at the race.
I mean, it just means so much to those as they cross the finish line. They put so much into it, not just them, right? The individuals, the people who support them, the family back at home. It's just such a, yeah. I'm not even going to attempt to describe how much that means to so many people.
How did the race go? The race side of it. The men got 100. Basically, now it's going to take 100 miles to get on the podium, and even then, you could get 100 miles and not make the podium.
I mean, you had Austin come second in his age group. Like, if that's something that's going to blow minds, like.
So we just watched the age group awards, and so I pulled out my phone and I was like, "Hey, I'm 43 years old." I was like, "What if I wanted to compete seriously in my age group? How many miles would it take to win my age group? 100 miles." That's not going to happen.
And so I just, I keep coming back to this point about balance. We had a wonderful field, a lot of people participating. And the men's race, you had Trevor coming up, DJ coming up. There was changing positions all the way through. You had such strong competition. And those stories, right? People who could have gone on who were broken. People are like, nah, 100 and I'm done, right? It was as good, I think, as good as it gets.
It was amazing. Tyler Veerman, he was in first place. And we were even talking about him on the broadcast. We thought the race was over. But he got to 100 miles and he was done. And then he got passed by two guys that did 105.
Exactly. I mean, I was there when he came in at the finish line. And I likewise, I was like, I checked in, how's he doing? And he stopped down and speak to me. And I looked down because I was like, you got plenty of time to go out for another lap. He's like, body says no. And I think the way he was describing it to me is he said in his head he'd said 100 and he'd asked his body to give him 100 and he came across and his body said, you've had your 100, you're not getting any more.
Let's not get greedy. On the women's side, watching Chris Rogowski run 100 miles, what were you guys thinking when you saw that?
Again, just wonderful. So impressed with her. How does one describe watching her cross the finish line, having achieved something no one has achieved before, and trying to work out why she doesn't look tired? I mean, help me with that one.
I bet you she ran her last lap faster than I would run my first lap with no obstacles. She's a remarkable, remarkable athlete.
And so lovely with it as well. As you say, first time here, and I think really endeared herself with the community, was wonderful out in course. People had a wonderful time racing against her and just running with her. I mean, a pleasure to have her, and just such significant congratulations and kudos to her for the achievement.
When you see her putting up so many miles, is there a conversation like, oh, maybe we made it too easy? Do you guys think about that?
No, not at all, because again, I think you've got to look at the average mileage over the field. Last year, when people are putting 115 down, I think, this is probably getting too easy. But if you're winning in around that 100, 105 mark, I think you're in a great place. And if you look at, the mileage done by second and third place there, no, I don't think the race was too easy at all. If you look at the average mileage, she was just remarkable. That's
true. If you just pretend her results aren't in there, it looks like a normal year. It looks like you're right. So we just announced, Tough Mudder just announced the venue for 2023.
Joe's Farm in Vermont.
Well, you also announced another venue. Okay, first of all, how fun would that be to do World Toughest Mudder in Vermont? We were worried this year would be cold. Vermont would be cold. but no, the real venue for 2023 will be Granbury, Texas, a couple hours west of Dallas. What can people look forward to in 2023?
I mean, statistically, right, it's going to be freezing cold and miserable. There's going to be uncharacteristically bad weather. It's a very different terrain, right? We've got, hard, rocky ground again. It's going to be exposed. When you were in the trees this time, it was almost tranquil, but you were also protected from the wind in a way that I don't think you will there. So, encourage people to listen to those who have gone before. We've obviously run in these kind of editions before. And there's a lot of wisdom out there for those people who are going, I want to give Tough Mudder a go. Join the community.
Any last thoughts for the community? Anything to say kind of as a, goodbye to World's Toughest 2022?
As always, just so grateful to everyone who's come out and kind of left it all there at the event, both in their personal accomplishments and the support of, us at HQ, the volunteers, everybody else who was working to put on the event, and each other. Just a massive, massive thank you, and we look forward to doing it again with you all next year.
Giles Chater, thanks much.
Cheers, Will. Thank you.
Special thanks to Giles Chater for appearing on this episode. Well done, Giles. Come back anytime. You have the World Championship / brand director golden ticket. Come on anytime. It was so good to see everybody. It was like a big family reunion. I love World's Toughest Mudder. I love the race. I love the community. I love everything about it. It was so good to see you out there. There were people I saw and waved to I didn't even get the chance to talk to. You know what? It's a long weekend, but it's only a weekend. Hey, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I will talk with you soon. Go spend time with someone you love.